Hey, this is Joe Gilder from the Recording Revolution, and I've got an audio test for you today. This one's interactive, so I want you to leave a comment with your guess as to what's going on. So I'm going to play for you two pieces of audio. It's the same exact piece of audio, but I've changed something from one to the next. And I want you to use your magical ear powers to identify what did I do to it. What processing did I apply to go from the first one to the second one? Okay, here it is inside of Studio One. So this, everywhere that it's grayed out, you can see I duplicated this track and I've got it set up to essentially alternate back and forth between clip 1 and clip 2. And just to make things a little easier to see, I'm going to delete these muted sections just so that it's a little bit easier to spot where you are. So when I hit play, clip 1 will play for 2 bars, then clip 2, then 1, then 2, then 1, then 2, and back and forth. And I made it longer here in the middle so that it kind of flips the order. So then it starts, the second half of it starts with 2 and then goes back to 1. And I want you to tell me what's the difference. What do you hear going from clip 1 to clip 2? What do you think I did? What did I do to the audio to go from clip 1 to clip 2? So here's how this will work. I'm going to hit play. I'm going to let it play all the way through. And then I want you to pause the video once you've listened and leave your comment with your guess. Submit your comment and then continue watching the video to find out more. You can always go edit your comment later. This is really fun. This is super instructive, and there's a point to all this, I promise. So let's dive in. Let's play. Here is the clip. By the way, this is one of my songs recorded here in this room with my band. The song's called Keep Your Distance. The band's called Stare Down. Here we go.
My own obsession, the purpose of my pointless mission, then nothing can I dive. Simple melody, it rips through the core of me, and still nothing, barely alive.
Okay, so it's fairly subtle. I didn't do a super big obvious thing because I really wanted you to kind of work towards it. But if you have no clue, maybe rewind and listen one more time, maybe crank it up a little bit, and then pause the video, leave your comment, and with your guess. Now, I know this is totally not fair because I know the answer and I'm not playing along, but I actually experienced this exact test in a live setting through a PA system, and Graham Cochran was actually in the room, and we both got it wrong. Pretty sure. I know he did. I think I did too. So what guesses might you have? Well, here's what I experienced. There was definitely a difference. It wasn't huge, but when it got to the second one, things felt thicker in the low end, right? There was like the bass got a little funk and kind of was fuller, bigger, warmer, kind of all those catchphrases that we like to use, which is what makes it so frustrating to learn how to do this stuff, because someone says, oh, it sounds all warm and thick. And you're like, that's great, but wow, how do I get there? Or what do I do to get there? All right, so here's the big reveal. If you haven't put your guess down yet, pause, put your comment with your guess, and I'm going to give you the answer in 3, 2, 1. The difference between the two is that the second clip is 1 decibel louder. That's it. I did not add any EQ, I did not add any compression or saturation or tape emulation or any other number of multiband processing, any other thing to it. I just changed the volume. Now, it's not a huge, massive difference, right? It's not like, oh, it went from sounding terrible to sounding amazing, but it does sound different. And that's just a single decibel. A single decibel made specifically for me at least, the low end, made the relationship of the low end to the rest of the mix different. And that is the point I want to make. A lot of us, myself included, although I've trained myself to not do it anymore, but when we get into a mixing environment where we're going to take tracks, we're going to blend them together, we're going to add all kinds of plugins and processings and spit out a finished, hopefully amazing sounding mix, one of the things that we skip over, and it's understandable, but it's detrimental, is we skip over getting the levels right. We jump straight to the plugin. Let me add EQ, compression, all that fun stuff, and that stuff is wonderful. But if a single decibel of difference made the low-end relationship change, how much more important is it that we get the levels of, say, our kick drum and our bass guitar and whatever else has low-end information? How important is it that we take the time to get those relationships right before we come in like a knight in shining armor with all of our plugins to save the day and fix things? Hopefully you're starting to see what I'm getting at here. Even a small difference in volume makes the low end feel different. So if you are trying to combat problems in your low end, it could be that the levels are wrong, and it's not this big complicated EQ compression solution that you need to find. You just need to tweak your overall levels. That's why we call Graham Cochran and I both, we're big fans of making sure you do a static mix before you reach for plugins and do other stuff. Get the levels right. Back in the old days when the Beatles were first recording in Abbey Road, they called the engineers balance engineers because their job was to balance the incoming signals that were probably being recorded straight to tape or straight to whatever they were using. That's our job as well. We have a lot more fancy tools and a lot more advanced technology, which is wonderful, but sometimes we reach for that technology before we've actually gotten the levels where they need to be. Example would be you're wrestling with a bass guitar track. You EQ it, you compress it, you maybe do a multi-band thing on it, you duplicate it, add distortion to one and the other, and then you try to do parallel processing on the two, and you're just wrestling with it and you're wrestling with it when the actual solution was it was just too loud. That's it. Not, a compressor will fix that. Compressor does adjust volume, but it does other things too that we don't need. It just needed to be turned down. That's it. So if you struggle with muddy mixes, if you struggle with the low end in your mixes always not being what you want it to be, there's a good chance you've moved past the level setting phase before you should. So next time you sit down to mix, before you start grabbing all your favorite plugins, take an extra 10 minutes. Do what you normally do, but then add an extra 10 minutes to get those levels right. Play the game of how good can I make this sound by just moving the faders. You'll be surprised how great you can make it sound. And then once you're done with that, you've laid the foundation to create an amazing mix that probably doesn't need as much processing as you thought it did because you took the time to get the levels right. All right, that's it for me. If you are not subscribed, please do so. I've got a lot more fun stuff planned for you. We're going to make some great music this year. I'll see you.